What is up, math superstars? In this edition of Mr. Peterson Presents, I'm bringing to you lesson 1.2. This is how to model fractions, decimals, and percent. So here we go in our first part in modeling fractions. Our keyword here that we've been talking about in this unit is ratios. Ratios like 2 out of 3 or 5 out of 8 can be written as fractions. So here in our notes, we're given 3 different fraction models here. So all we gotta do is, for the denominator, we count the total pieces. So in our first fraction, our denominator is 4. And then how many are shaded in is our numerator, which is 1. So we have a part to whole ratio. In our second fraction, we have 3 parts total, but we have 1 part shaded, so we have 1 out of 3 parts that are shaded. And our last fraction here, we have 4 total parts, and there are 3 shaded, so we would read that as 3 out of 4. For modeling decimals, ratios like 5 out of 10, 7 out of 100, or 9 out of 1000 can be written as decimals. So here we have our place value chart here. So if we have the ratio 5 out of 10, our decimal would be, we'd have 0 in the ones place, and we'd have a 5 in the tens place. If we have the ratio 7 out of 100, we'd have a 0 in the ones place with our decimal, and then we'd have a 0 in the tens place, and a 7 in the hundreds place. And if we were going to write out the decimal 9 out of 1000, we'd have a 0 in the ones place. We'd have our decimal. We'd have a 0 in the tens place. We'd have a 0 in the hundreds place. And then we'd have a 9 in the thousands place. And so that place value will tell us what model to choose. So here we're given a couple decimal models here. So in our first model here, we're going to count the total number of parts here. So we have, the parts are 10, and there are 10 shaded. So that, when we reduce that fraction, is 1 over 1, which is equal to 1. If we were to write that as a decimal, we'd write that as 1 whole with no tens left over. So in our second model here, we have 10 total parts, and there are 4 out of the 10 shaded. So if we're going to write that as a decimal, we'd write that as 0 in the ones place, our decimal point, and a 4 in the tenths place. So we have 4 tenths. So here we're given this model here. So this model is 2 models put together in one. So our first part, we have 10 over 10, which is equal to 1. And in our second model here, out of 10 total parts, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 6 that are shaded, so we have 6 tenths. So for our decimal, we have 1 whole, our decimal point, and 6 in the tenths place. So we're given a couple more examples here. So we're going to pause the video right here. These ones you're going to try on your own here. So here we go, the model number, I'm going to label these model number 1. So now we have a grid that's out of 100. And so the number of pieces that are shaded in example number 1 is 100. In the red example, this is the one that's not found in your notes, but since these are all out of 100, so what we do is we can count by tens to make it easier. So we're going to count. So we have 10, 20, 30, so we have 40, and then we have 41, 42. We have 43 parts that are shaded out of 100. So if we're going to write that as a decimal, that equals 0, decimal point, 43 or 43 hundredths. And in our example here, this is the one that's found in your notes. So we have 2 different parts to make 1 decimal. So our first part here is 100 out of 100, which is equal to 1. And in our second part here, we don't have a full bar of 10, so we know that we have 9 there. So our decimal here, sorry, fraction is 9 over 100, which is equal to 0. We have no tenths. We have 9 hundredths shaded. So we put that together. Our decimal for both of these models is 1.09. Let's talk about modeling percent. Ratios like 41 out of 100, 25 out of 100, or 2 out of 100 can be written as a percent. So we can notice that these are all out of 100. So the word percent actually means out of 100. And so a percent, using our percentage sign, is a ratio that compares any number out of 100. So we have a few models here. So this model shows us what 10% looks like. So just like our decimal models, what we can do is, we know this is out of 100, and so our numerator is 10. So anytime you see that the denominator is out of 100, we're going to take our numerator, which is 10, we're going to write that as 10%. So we know that means 10 out of 100. So in our model, that's 78%. So we can write that as our fraction. Well, first we got to count our spaces here. So we know that there's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, and then there's 8 parts in that row. So we know that our fraction would be 78 out of 100. So anytime we see that our denominator is 100, we take our numerator, that's 78, and we know that is 78%, or we can say that as 78 out of 100.